topic. And there's no doubt, looking at the kind of responses we've already got, especially on Facebook, just says a lot about what is at stake. This is where we talk about the issue of financial transparency. Many people, many couples have had issues arising out of the need to try to share financial information. Is there a better way that probably it could have been done? Is it possible to trust one another? Why is there a trust issue? Is it more men who are distrusting or more women distrusting? What has gone wrong? Is it something that can be reversed? We will be having that conversation. The interesting thing about Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, is you. The stories are about you, what your experiences are. It's not about me talking to you, it's about your personal experiences in terms of how you deal with those situations. Many homes sometimes have even ended up breaking up simply because one, they didn't have the right conversation about this particular important topic, or they had it and they disagreed. So the moment you get into irreversible differences or irreconcilable differences, the next thing is each one going their own way. But does it really have to be that bad? There are families that have put everything to the table, discussed their budgets, and then everybody kept, their side of the promise. Do you necessarily have to share your income information with your partner, or would you rather work on a budget and then you decide who should bring how much? Probably you still need that information to be able to start. Maybe just to give us, to get us thinking, I'd like us to watch this small clip just to get us going. And inshallah, you might find a very interesting aspect that will come in the next phase, where the Islamic Sharia, something that you probably didn't know, especially for the Muslim women out there, you will be surprised what is out there. But I can tell you, messages are just flooding my inbox. I mean, I've had nearly 20 messages here, and I'll be sharing them off the back of this particular clip. I would like to hear your stories. Please open up. You do not have to personalize it. It might just be a view that represents other women, or probably in a conversation where you have sat and you've ended up having that conversation, and through that conversation, you ended up reaching particular conclusions. It is important that we hear from you. Tobaako kyolekayo ezokka meeza mutuula mwenna ne musalawo ne mugamba nti tugenda kuba nti tuleeta kino oba tuleete kino, bifiira luddawa? Lwaki amazima gafuuka ekizibu? We'll just have, Isma, if we can have just that clip, please, just to get us thinking, and it will help us as more people join in. It will be unfortunate if some people join after that clip has played, but it is important that it helps us to get started talking. Isma, please, if you can have that clip. Thank you.
Conversation with your partner, with your spouse, your significant other, because that conversation about money is not always easy to have. But if you're in a serious relationship, or you're going to be getting into a serious relationship, you want to make sure that both of you are on the same page when it comes to your finances. So I'm going.
Oh, is that a connection problem? Yeah, internet is always playing up.
So I'm going to be sharing with you some tips to help you guide that conversation so that you can make having that money conversation with your partner, setting goals around your money with your partner, you can make that whole process so much easier. So first things first, you have to be honest with each other about your finances. You have to share what the big picture of your financial situation looks like. And this is on both sides. You have to tell them and they need to tell you. And the whole point of being honest is so that you guys can establish that open line of communication and so that you guys can work on your future goals together. When you're in a relationship, you guys are a team, you're a unit, and you have a built-in accountability partner. And this person is going to support you, they're going to motivate you, and you're going to do the same for them. So why not work on your goals together? When you're both working on your goals together, you're more likely to accomplish them, and you're more likely to accomplish bigger things than you would have accomplished if you were doing it on your own. So honesty is really important. Tell them about your financial obligations. What current debt do you have? What bills are you paying every month? And start to have that conversation with them. And it's also important, like I mentioned, to have the conversation about your goals. Where do you see yourselves in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years? Having that conversation will allow you guys to establish a focus, a joint focus, so you both know what you're working towards. And sometimes having the conversation about where you stand with your finances can be difficult. And so it's important to set the stage correctly. Don't make it a big event, make it a conversation. You know your partner best. So figure out when it's a good time to bring up the conversation and make it casual. And also keep in mind that you don't have to talk about everything going on with your finances in one sitting. You can have this conversation, over time, over a few days, over a few weeks, even if you need to, but make sure that you lay out the big picture of your finances with them and they do the same with you. And one of the things I usually tell people that ask me is that you can start off by saying, listen, I want to come clean about my finances and I hope you'll do the same. And even if you get mad at me, the reason why I'm telling you is because I want to make change. I want to pay off this debt now. I want you to know about it. I want to have your support and set the expectation that, if you have anything in your financial situation that you think I may not be happy with, that's okay because I'm going to support you. So again, honesty is the best policy when it comes to your finances in a relationship. So the next thing you want to do when it comes to having this conversation about money with your partner is you want to remember that it is not a fight. So many people make the mistake of approaching this conversation about money with their partner so aggressively, or they get on them and they nag them about their finances and what they're not doing, and they only talk about what they're doing wrong. But again, keep in mind that your significant other, your spouse, your partner, they're part of your team. They are for you, they're not against you. So don't approach it aggressively. Don't approach the conversation in anger. Don't approach the conversation when you're under stress. It's important to look at the whole situation objectively and find the approach that works best for your partner. So you know what triggers them, what makes them upset, what makes them sad, what makes them happy, and use that as leverage as to when you have the conversation. But it is not a fight. And if you get into the conversation and you feel like it's turning into a big fight, then shelf it for a later time. It's important that, again, I keep saying it's important because this is your relationship. This is you and your person, and you don't want money to be the reason why you don't work out. And unfortunately, in the society that we live in, money is a lot of times, almost 50% of the time, the cause for breakups and divorces. And so it's all about the approach and all about
I take
both
note
of
of
you
your
coming
point.
to
I
the
think
table to
the
have the
internet is
conversation with
relatively
open minds
slow,
and open
but
hearts.
the
And
clip is
sometimes
fine.
it takes a little bit of time for people to get on board to
Should
what it
I
is they're trying to
ask
accomplish,
actually if you
like
can hear
maybe curbing spending or
the
paying off
audio?
your debt. But the approach matters. If you keep approaching somebody aggressively and angrily, and when you're always under stress or when you're upset, they're less likely to listen to what it is that you have to say or take into account your feelings because they feel like they're being attacked. So again, it is not a fight. It is not a fight. It is not a fight. Okay, so next, once you guys have had the big conversation or a series of conversations and you've kind of laid things out on the table, then you want to make sure that you start working on those goals together. And that starts with budgeting together. So put some time on the calendar once a month, and in advance of each month, sit down together and go over your budget. What are your expenses for the coming month? What is your income for the coming month? What are the one-time expenses that you have coming up, like travel, weddings, gifts, etc., and talk through them. That way you guys are both on the same page when it comes to how much you're going to be spending and how much you're going to be saving. And so a couple suggestions to help you guys be successful with budgeting could be that you both allocate free spending money to each other, which is basically money that you can spend on whatever you want, no questions asked. Or you can come up with a rule with each other where you say, if you're going to be spending more than X amount on something that we did not plan, let's have a conversation about it. What you want to keep in mind when you're managing your money as a couple is that you don't want to get on each other's nerves about every single cent. Um, it can be annoying, it can be aggravating, and it's just really annoying. And so once you've set your budget and you've allocated how you guys are going to spend and save, then you want to have periodic check-ins, but you don't want to be texting them or calling them at work every single day. And you don't want that to happen to you either, saying, oh, I just saw a line item for gum, I just saw a line item for a $2 drink. Like, you want to make sure that you be mindful of how you check in on your budget. So set time aside to check in every week. And the last thing I want to say about talking to your partner about money or managing your finances together as a couple is that you want to do what works for you. And so what works for another couple might not necessarily work for you because you and your partner know each other best. And so you want to take what works best for you. And so I've given you all these suggestions and all this advice. And so it's now up to you to figure out a system that works for you. And that also includes where you put your money and how you manage the actual money. So maybe having a joint account is what works for you, or maybe having a joint account and then separate accounts is what works for you, or maybe having completely separate accounts is what works for you. The point is that you want to do what works for you because you guys know your relationship, you know each other, and the last thing you want is to have somebody else's advice cause conflict in your relationship. So that's it for this video, and I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. And if you have, please subscribe, and I'll be back again with a new topic
Isma,
really
thank
soon.
you very,
Thank
very
you.
much. I think this can get us having a conversation, and I think this lays out a few sort of guidelines. But importantly, you notice that the one thing that works for one person might not work for another person. So you have to find ways that work. You need to customize the situation to your own circumstances, and that is very important. Let's hear some of the comments, and then I'll get to you. If you have any comment regarding what we've just had, please just raise up your hand and let's get talking. Remember, this is a conversation we are having. But there are certain general things yogamba nti abantu bali bwe bati ne bwe bati. Iga Barnabas already on Facebook on Corporate Muslims says the circumstances at hand in this generation we are living in cannot allow for such. There is mistrust in almost every marriage. Women are insecure. Infidelity, both sides, is on the rise. So things like sharing joint accounts don't make sense to most couples. Maybe it is something you agree with, or maybe you don't. Hamza Abigaba says once your spouse gets to know of your income, you have to explain the expenditure, and people here don't like that. He's in Uganda, and therefore that's the situation. Number two, he says in most cases it's only one person who works and wouldn't want to be dictated upon on expenditure. So it's not an African thing to declare or share financial data. Shifa Nyirangoma, who is in the United Arab Emirates, says abasajja bibatabura nnyo. You are 100% majority African men don't like their money issues discussed. Self-employment adds pepper to the mix. Richard Mugarura says, a friend confided in me that every time there would be money in the open, the spouse would get excited on acquiring some luxuries. In the end, the taps were closed to cut on unnecessary expenditures. You can keep them coming, and we shall keep reading them. I actually still have a lot more, but let's have a chance to hear from you. Anybody who is on the forum, please, if you can just raise your hand and let's hear from you. Let's hear what you have to say. Muzigabana, Muyogera, Galaxy S9. If you can unmute yourself, please. Galaxy S9 Plus. Galaxy S9. Mariam we Texas abadde emboozi agigwiriddemu wakati wa jidde. Mariam, could we hear your experience, please? Oh, Abdul Karim Mugabi's hand is up. Okay, Isma, if we can get Abdul Karim Mugabi, please. And the man kicking off this debate now looks like we are going to have a long night. I can't hope. Two participants have raised their hands. Isma, please. Let's get to Abdul Karim Mugabi first, and then we get to the hands. Abdul Karim Mugabi, you have the mic.
Yes, salam alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to 75W Radio. Our program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, and we are streaming live as well on Zoom and YouTube on Ummah Connected. Thank you very much for joining the program. Your story.
Yeah, thanks. The financial status is critical, you know. I had something to pinch in. It's related to what the topic is, but mostly it's concentrating within our UK communities. But I'll just chip in for now. What you've been talking about.
Yes.
If we were to share the financial status of whichever party, I think there must be trust. And to me, I find a difference between a wife or a partner and a friend. So you can have a wife, but she may not be your friend, or you can have a husband, he may not be your friend. So if there is that collaboration, that, oh, you're my wife, but you're my friend, which is very critical. That's how I understand it. Right. I'll be able to open to you. I may not be open to you 100%, but there must be a driving factor where I have to open to you. So if, for instance, most marriages here are for convenience. I just come into you, either I will need papers or I just bump into you because I'm lonely. And with time, we just tuliawo, kintu kitambulirawo, tekiri ku ground eri solid. Everyone has his own agenda. Or I'm with someone because that's the means to my destination. But deep inside, we are separate. So in such a scenario, it's hard to open up the financial status of whoever is involved.
Right.
But what I would say that if that's critical, based on our African culture, let's have a driving project on mutual grounds, and let it be professionally registered. Let's say if we are to have a project like building, let's agree on what contribution each party is coming in with. Is it 40, 60? Is it 50-50? And every stakeholder should be involved in whatever decision has to be made. Whether
Abdul Karim, that would sound so much like a business instead of a relationship. I thought you can grow to love someone because while it might have been circumstantial, like you said, you are looking for papers and you managed to get the papers, but then you evolve into love. Is there any way that you might be able to build trust? Maybe, for example, I'm just thinking aloud, run a joint project once as a trial aspect to see how far you could go with building up the trust. Would that help in
unfortunately, the way I see love, maybe, you know, love is relative. The way I see it like a business. If I love you, I need you to be value-adding person. That's how I see it. If I'm not to add value to you, then with time, you're going to be valueless. And the only thing which will stick closer to you, there may be parents or extended family members, that you're a son of who, you're a daughter of who, so let's keep it close. But if it's the way I see it personally, I see it as a business operation that, if I need to keep with you, let me add value to you. Value addition may be financial, may be advice, may be support, but these things of, I don't know how you see
All right,
it.
Abdul Karim, just stay there because I think I would want to get a lady to sort of talk to you. Is there any lady whose hand is up there, ready and
Nachito.
Yes, Nuru Nachito. Nuru Nachito, please, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You've heard Abdul Karim Mugabe ne assumption ze. Do you agree?
Yes, I've heard him.
Yes.
It's a bit interesting when he says he sees love as a business. That's the first time I've heard someone interpreting it that way. But from my experience and the few families I know, this financial thing is actually a big problem, especially here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being that both parties go out to work. And when you compare that with our cultural background, whereby men has to do everything, especially rent, they pay for everything, that doesn't normally work here in UK in families, especially from Africa. Men tend to argue out, you women, maybe you might be getting all the benefits from the children, you are also working. So basically, to me, I think this should be between the two people who love each other, either even if they don't love each other, even if they're business partners, but they need to come to an agreement who pays what and who does what. We might not necessarily share each other income that I get 1,000, you get 2,000. No, it can come into an understanding. And in that way, some men see their responsibility as African men, they want to be responsible in charge of the family, they might need to contribute more than the woman. So it depends on the two people. But some people might take it as a business and I say, hey, you also work, I work, we share. Our total bills are 1,000, bring 500, I also bring 500.
But
So
what
it's,
I've seen, Noor, what I've
yeah.
noticed is quite often women are earning a lot more money than the men. And when it comes to the African home responsibility, as it does come out, there's tension there because while you would want to stay afloat, you're also thinking what percentage of your income that is eating away. Would that be an issue? And Abdul Karim, you are still on. Your mic is unmuted. I wanted you to speak to Noor. Just have that conversation and whether you agree with what she's saying.
You know, this thing of love and trust is, to me, I find it very complex
Noor
because
says it's the first time she's hearing love as a business.
that's why I told you that that's my perception. You know, that's how I see it, and someone may be seeing it differently, which I concur with her. But what I was driving on was like, we can't be together for 20, 30 years, yeah? And I value you the same way I found you when you were in your 20s, yeah? So that's the value addition I was talking about, that we should find a way of how do I add value in our marriage or in our relationship, yeah? It can't be a bed of roses that every day for 20 years, oh, we're fine, or we are perfect.
Listening.
Sorry?
I'm saying to Noor now, she's to respond to you.
Yeah, it can't be. And for instance, I'll give you like a case scenario whereby, when, like, especially here in UK, the time I came in here first, I was confused seeing young girls with babies and push buggies, and I was like, why is this like this? Until someone like, oh, this is the situation if you want to get a house. So if you want to get a house, it's like the ladies are more favored because they are priority because they have kids. Okay, well and good. But the scenario comes in, the situation comes in like you've been in a house and you have a married person, you're a married partner, whatever, for 20 years. And in a financial situation, there is a chance of you mortgaging this house where you've been in, either as a first sitting tenant or as a shared what? I'm running out of the type of
all right,
whatever.
That's fine, Abdul Karim. I think you really got us talking. Noor, are you done? Are you? Do you have any final words on that? How do we build the trust?
Yeah, building, again, like they said, you can't tell someone to love someone. It's like when two people separate and they say, oh, let's try to build up this relationship back. It's between two people. If those two people, that's what they've come to agree with to do, I think that's fine. That's why I said, to me, anything regarding finance, it's an understanding or trust between these two people. And between themselves, each can have different ways. For example, some families, like I say, they can say, let us share all the bills together. Another one man might say, no, me, I'm a man, don't do anything, I'll do it, even if you earn more. So it depends on both of you, how you love each other and how you see things. But eventually, in the long run, most people would like each person to contribute towards that. No one would say, oh, let my husband only pay, or let the woman only pay. No. So I come to the conclusion, to me, that these financial issues in family, it depends on the two people themselves, the way they know each other, the way they understand each other, and the way they kind of love each other. That's when love comes in.
Is there
that's all I can say.
To make it work? Is there a need to make it work?
Yeah.
In your view, do you think there is a need to make it work?
Yes, there is a need to make it work. For example, I don't agree with the man only contributing when I'm also working. If I'm not working, then that's fair enough. Even if there are some women who are not working, but they still get the benefit. And actually, the man adds up that the benefit you get is more than even the one him is earning who goes out to work. And you who are not working, you are getting more benefits. That way, also you have to contribute. So basically, you can sit down and say, what are our bills? And you decide what can you pay and what the other ones cannot pay. It's, again, it goes back to both of you. But I don't think it's fair for either side, a woman, a man, to say, I can't contribute anything at all. No, that's not fair.
Barakallahu fikum Nuru Nachito. Thank you very much for that beautiful contribution. Now, Jojo is saying in the chat room, is Abdul Karim Mugabe married? Love ain't no business. Galaxy Tab A 2016 says transparency is really important in marriage. That is via Zoom chat room, but it doesn't mean that you have to declare all your earnings to your spouse and how you spend it. All we have to do is share the bills. The rest is history. I can't tell you how much I spend on my family back home. That's my private life. As a husband, you have to cater for your family. Adding value. I agree with Abdul Karim, and that is Farida there saying. Actually, a very beautiful story here that would get us continue with our conversation. Message here says it is Mrs. H. She decides to go for Mrs. H. She says, here is my 2 pence. 1, we have different personal money stories. That is our relationship with money based on what we observed in our childhood settings. That in and of itself breeds different spending or saving habits. So it might just have to do with what how your parents used to deal with money. Number 2, trust or lack thereof between partners. Mukanya kuchimu omumumwe nakora ebibye nava kumuramwa automatically creates friction and mistrust. Number 3, for women, especially Muslim women, there is potentially always the voice in the back of your mind of having a co-wife, an official side chick, where the significant other cyphers of family income, even that generated together to fulfill their desires. So we as women, perhaps not all plan for those situations. In many of my family members, nange kenyini chantukako. This is personal experience. Brilliant, Mrs. H there. Number 4, she says, men have been known to use money as a weapon of oppression against women. In fact, I remember in one of the Sheikh Sekad's session, a gentleman said, and I quote, then pay attention to the money. That is, if you control the money, omukazi akakana. Wallahi mviri zava kumtwe. Of course, the same argument could be used against women. Of course, I disagree. Ceteris paribus. She's actually made quite a number of, and the last point, financial ignorance is not an option. And more than ever, we women are always working against a tide. So my personal mantra is that I work with the mindset that nsobola okwetuusaako kyonna kye neetaaga oba kye njagala without the burden of relying on a partner. Therefore, whatever I'm blessed to earn, I save, invest wisely for me and my kids. Akantu ako aka my kids. Amayumba gazimbibwa Kampala mu nyumba y'abaana bange. And it will be that you are dying very fast as abasajja ffe tusooka okufa. Let's continue the conversation here. Isma, do we have any hands up? Only to first of all say thank you very much. What we want to see where it's very late at the moment, but they've managed to stay up. May God bless you, and I hope you enjoy the conversation that we are having. Hajara B here says it all depends on how one was raised. If you grew up in a family where money was not an issue, you may not find any issues with discussing it. But if you are raised when money is an issue, then you will see it as a transaction. You can keep the conversation coming. Program is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, on 75W Radio live on Facebook and streaming live as well on YouTube and Zoom via Ummah Connected. Well, you can keep those points coming in, and inshallah, I'll keep reading them in. One last one, Abdurrahim Bawazi via Facebook says, for me, it's expenditure priorities. Wife normally wants consumption expenditure. Me, more focused on investment expenditure for a more comfortable tomorrow. That is via Facebook from Abdurrahman Bawazi Miskinullah. So if I keep the bundles on the table, guess what? I can only guess or imagine. Isma, if you can have the Islamic perspective into this, and then that will open up a little bit of more of our conversation. Thank you, everyone who's joined us, and just alert your friends to come and join the conversation. It is just starting. If we can have the first clip, Isma, please.
.com and apply for funding. Applying is free and it doesn't affect your credit score. Seamless transition. But what you haven't heard me talk about on this channel yet is what I'm going to talk about in this video, which is the decision that will likely have the most impact on your financial well-being during your lifetime. And that decision is who you decide to get married to. Now, obviously, this decision won't only affect your financial well-being, but your overall well-being. So it's extremely important. So what I want to cover in this video are a few tips that inshallah you'll find useful, regardless of whether you are looking to get married or you're already married or you are going through a divorce. So let's get started. Before you get married, when you're in the engagement period, typically you're head over heels about your partner, you're a couple of lovebirds, and in your eyes, your partner can do no wrong. Now, during this period, my advice would be to absolutely have fun, but also try to have some of the more serious conversations that are going to give you insights into what type of person the person you're considering for marriage actually is. Now, as it relates to money, one of the things that you want to figure out is what is the general philosophy of this person regarding money. So questions that you probably want to figure out the answers to are, do they check on prices before they make a purchase? Are their feelings towards you proportional to how much you spend on them? Are they putting pressure on you to spend more than what you can afford? Do they have some expensive habits? Can you afford those habits? Are they only happy when they're spending money? Or do they have a great attitude and they can make the best out of any situation? Now, obviously, you want to be tactful about finding out the answers to these questions. You don't want to directly ask someone, hey, are your feelings towards me proportional to how much I spend on you? You're likely going to offend them, and you're probably not going to get any information out of their answer anyway, because they're probably going to say what sounds right. No one says, yeah, my feelings towards you are proportional to how much you spend on me. And if they do, then that's a red flag if I've ever seen one. Additionally, don't go into a marriage thinking that you're going to change the person after you get married. It's hard enough to change yourself, let alone anyone else. When you get into a marriage, you should have the mentality of, I think I can be happy with this person as they are, even if they don't change after marriage. Now, in addition to their general philosophy on money, you want to figure out what their balance sheet looks like. I'm not talking about the details, I'm talking about the big ticket items. So if the person has tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt, that's something that you need to take into consideration. Now, I'm not saying that this should cause you not to marry the person, but understand that when you do marry that person, you are married to that debt, and therefore you should have a plan on how you're going to deal with that debt after you get married. On the other hand, if you are the person that has the debt in your name, then I think it is in line with Islamic principles and just general morality that you tell the other person about your debt, because I think they have a right to know this information. Again, try to be tactful about the ways you both acquire and disclose this type of information. Finally, especially for guys, make sure that you're honest about your level of wealth. Don't give off the impression that you're richer than you actually are. Be honest about your lifestyle and what you are and aren't able to afford. If she's okay with that, then great. If she's not, then it's better for her to know prior to marriage than after marriage, wherein she has legitimate reason to feel like she was lied to and she was deceived, and that's not any way you want to start off a marriage. Now, moving on to after you find the lucky.
Right. So basically, I just wanted to get us introduced into this, because quite often there are particular topics that you might think actually they have not been discussed from an Islamic perspective. And it's quite interesting, when you get to some of these things, and especially in two elements, at the marriage phase, but also importantly at the divorce phase. It is very interesting, how much detail actually goes in there. And quite often you'll find that these are not things we do normally, talk about. And I think the importance of such programs is now we open the curtains and look into the reality of situations. You can see now why it would be important. For example, before you set out with a person, to know it does not have to come like one blast immediately. You remember the first clip we watched, there was talk about don't bring it in one conversation. We have to talk. If there is something that men fear or don't like, is that statement of we have to talk. It can never be, a positive feeling. You just know it's a battle, and therefore you prepare yourself to go and fight. So the conversation can sort of be spread over time. But then even trust is built up with time. But to marry someone that you don't trust, I think, would be so unfortunate. But of course, unless you're in the context of Abdul Karim Mugabe's love being a business. Other than that, it would actually be really, really difficult to do that. I think Galaxy S9 Plus here says, I may need to be open to my husband, yet he's dealing with other women, with extended family, and above all, financial status is their main focus. There is always that. Just like women might be probably supporting people back home, and we have these burdens that we left back home that we cannot in any way underestimate. How do we deal with that? Hands up, please, if you're there. If there are no hands, then I can actually just play the second phase of this very video, and then we can have a conversation before we go to the divorce part. I can assure you one thing, on the divorce part, the story will actually surprise you. From an Islamic perspective, this is what we were looking at. Isma, please, if you don't mind, I don't see any hands up. And good enough, I can see some sheikhs here. Sheikh Abdul Qadir Kawoya, Barakallahu Fikum. Sheikh Amregeya, Sebo Nkurabye. Tusumurure ibintu byonna tubyase tubyogere, abakyala baguddewo, abaami baguddewo. Mbadde nsaba to having this kind of conversation, especially within the confines ezirimu empisa ezaffe ez'eddiini ng'abantu ab'eddiini, whether you are Muslim or Christian or whatever, omuntu munaddiini eva aba alina empisa z'alina z'atuulidde. Isma Sebo, if we can have the second bit of this clip while we wait to go and have the conversation.
Lucky person and you get married, my advice is to make sure you keep a budget. This basically means that every dollar that comes into the household needs to have a clear assignment, whether it's for savings or for investment or for consumption. And then the second thing I would advise is to make sure you have clear financial goals and make sure you write these goals down along with your plan on how to achieve them. And these financial goals should answer questions such as, by what age do you want to be debt-free? At every age, how much savings and investments do you want to have? When do you want to buy a house? And when do you want to retire? And these goals should be written together, and they should be revisited and updated together with your spouse. And then my third piece of financial advice is to make sure that you're not keeping your spouse in the dark regarding the family's finances. In Islam, it is the duty of the husband to provide financially for the family. But this doesn't mean that the wife should be kept in the dark regarding the family's finances. I think it is imperative for each spouse to know where the family stands financially. This can help keep both partners on the same page in terms of what they can and can't afford. And in case something happens to the husband, the wife has the knowledge and experience to manage the finances of the family. It can also be less stressful for the husband if they are not alone in their knowledge of the family's finances. And by the way, while we're on this topic, some people think that the husband should have his own separate finances and the wife should have her own separate finances, so each partner takes care of their own selves, so there's no dependencies between the two. And I wholeheartedly disagree with this line of thinking. If each spouse is entirely independent from the other and there are no dependencies between the two, then you don't really have a husband and wife relationship. What you have here is two roommates. Marriages naturally go through ups and downs, and if there are no dependencies in the relationship, then it makes it quite easy for either side to say to themselves, well, I don't need this other person, and just walk away whenever the going gets tough. So I actually think having dependencies between the husband and the wife, wherein the husband depends on the wife for some matters and the wife depends on the husband for other matters, that these dependencies actually increase the resiliency of the relationship. Now this brings me
sincere apologies. I'd muted myself and then I was talking to myself. Suddenly I realized. You can see that now we established, first of all, the kind of conversation that you can have before you get married. But then once you get married, how things also start changing. There are particular responsibilities where something might have been maybe a discussion you could just have lightly. Now it becomes compulsory to have once you're inside the home. but it's a decision again. It's down to husband and wife to make a choice. And without trust, because like marriage in Islam, marriage is a social contract. A social contract between two consenting adults, a husband and wife, given that's the wife handed over to the man by the rightful guardians to be able to, hand them over. This has a meaning in itself, and that's where it is very, very important that you should have this kind of conversation. But every family, every situation is different. It may be that you moved from home, you moved over in Europe, and you remained nosigala ng'oli musajja muganda. Waliwo abatuuka, and then you change so fast that you find yourself actually overspeeding, and in overspeeding there might be particular repercussions. Awo wonna tulina okutunuulira, how do you try to balance the situation? How do you balance the boat? Obeere nti okakasa okuba nti togenda kuba nti otomera. Mbadde nsaba Isma Sebo, Sheikh Amulegeya Sebo nkulabyeko awo, mbadde nsaba ojjemu wano otubuulire ku basajja ensimbi zino, abantu okuba nti basobola okugatta ensimbi oba omukyala n'omwami buli omu n'ateeka ku mmeeza. Kiri kitya Sheikh Amulegeya? Salaamu alaikum. Sheikh Amulegeya, you're unmuted, Sebo. Hello, Sheikh. Sheikh Amulegeya alabika yataddeko nadda ku mabbali. Sheikh Amulegeya woli ndabye Sheikh Abdul Kadir Kawoya. Sheikh Abdul Kadir Kawoya, Sebo, salaamu alaikum. Would like to tap in your wisdom, Sebo, ku conversation eno gye tulina wano olwaleero, especially as an elderly member of the community, but as a sheikh as well, but also as a Ugandan as well. Byogenda ogattagatta byonna bigenda birina gye byolekeza ku ekyo. Sheikh Sebo, what would be your view on this particular matter? Should we share? Should we disclose or shouldn't we disclose? Sheikh Abdul Kadir? The system has gone mute. Sheikh Abdul Kadir Kawoya. Abdul Malik Kitunzi. Abdul Malik. Farida says you can trust your husband, but he ends up spending the money to his side chicks. So what do you do as a wife? And why is this quite an issue? Subhanallah, this topic may bring fitna kati. Mitima jaka ruba sente ya chikazi mjesonyiwe uraira kaddu. Allahu Akbar walillahi alhamd. Well, it's a conversation we need to have. Abdul Karim Mugabi comes back saying, depending on your family setting, better to open up. Abdul Qadir Kawoya Sebo Sheikh Jose Okomieo, are you available? Kabere Abdul Malik Chitunzi, you've gone quiet as well. Okay, we can take the conversation much further now. I got loads of these comments here, just in case you missed at the start here. There were particular comments actually that I think we might be able to reflect upon just one by one. Mchara Hamida, Mchara H, not Hamida. She's referred to herself as Mrs. H. I don't know whether it is Hawa or Hamida. Oh, Abdul Karim Mugabi, I'll come to you. I just wanted us to reflect a little bit on these Yakoze points sitano that were really, really big points. Point is soka and we have different personal money stories. So muntu jakulide wa influencing how they deal with this. What issue ya trust between partners, mukanya kuchimu omuna akora bibye nava kumuramu, automatically it creates friction. Who actually does this the most? I think I would like to hear from the ladies. Ababani abasinga okwawukana ku ndagaano zino eziba zikanyiziddwako. Laila Kadu asserts that men definitely, and the men would beg to disagree. The men might. Mugabi, Abdul Karim Mugabi. Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. Kayira. What I was saying, much as opening up is a bit challenging to everyone, but there are situations where you can benefit in. For instance, I have a friend who was married but was not very close to the wife, and he got a stroke, and it was very severe. and there were serious documents which were needed by the legal department in terms of will, property, whatever, and they were not in the custody of the wife. The wife didn't know anything. He had a lot of money through partners, business partners, and the wife didn't know anything. She was in a shadow. So in such a situation, no matter how much you trust, that's why me personally, I value it as a business. If you're my partner and I really value you, I can't put you into the shadow of what I'm doing, because at one time, there is a scenario whereby you can't be able even to click what's going on, and it's only your wife or your husband to help you, to put you out of that situation. So that's why I'm saying there are situations where at least you have to give someone a benefit of doubt, but that one will be having some driving factors. For instance, if you have an extended family, how much do you contribute to your in-laws, and how much does she contribute to your in-laws? That one will also come to play. How much do I open up to you? You know? So to me, I would emphasize we look at being fair. I know to the ladies, we Muslims, especially if you bring it into Islamic settings, women are insecure because anytime you're going to bring number 2, number 3, number 4, yet the number 1 is the one who hustled to build this empire, which number 2, number 3 is going to come and enjoy. And when you're a man, you put her out. So I feel sorry for them, but I don't know what the sheikhs have to say about that. But going into this digital generation, that has to be played fairly to all parties.
Sorry, Abdul Karim, would you say that there is less patience in today's generation? Because it looks like just a few mistakes and, divorce is just straight. It's like just on people's lips. People are divorcing left, right, and center. Is there less of patience, or what has happened to push people into this?
No, it's not patience. It's, there is a lot of information sharing. Mm-hmm. Everything now is open. There is nothing which is private or secret, Back in the days when we were still young, you couldn't hear like so and so's wife, they've divorced. But now it's the order of the day. The mom tells the kids, I'm going to divorce your dad. And the kids are like, okay, but don't worry, I'll look after you. Everything will be fine, but I'm divorcing your dad. So the kid grows up knowing, oh, I can divorce anyone. You understand? So this social media, digital, and the crazy world we live in is pushing us to the edge, but coming to the basics, it's like we should get some value and trust for each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that will help us.
Barakallahu fikum. Thank you very much. Messages here. Laila Kadri is just on fire in the chat room. You will be surprised a man would use your savings to marry another woman. After God fear men. I think men would have a word to say on that. Hajati says, oyogedde nnyo abaami tebaba na mazima ku nsonga ya ssente ne bye bakola. Hajati actually gira ddala on Facebook wano mbadde nkusay, yes, you have unmuted yourself, Hajati. I'll come to you very briefly, but Julius Ajuna Atenyi on Facebook, Gambia, very interesting topic. You have to make sure that all major bills are being paid. If making a major purchase like vehicle or house, sit down with your partner and discuss about it. Declare how much you earn, how much you spend on bills and savings. Come up with a budget so that you are all on the same page. One of the leading causes of divorce is money. Be honest to each other. Halima Sara yagamba kimu twasigala kugatta bitanda. Hajjati akazinda kaina.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamu warahmatullahi.
Bannange topic eno Mugabi avudde waggulu Abdulmalik Masha Allah ensonga ogikonyeeko mu butuufu oba makkati. Simanyi oba okyali mwana muto oba oli mukulu. ebintu bino birimu ensonga bbiri. Ensonga esooka, abakyali abavubuka muyige ate mukyuse, muve ku byedda. Ebyedda maama yabeeranga waka, taata n'agenda anoonya ssente, maama n'alabirira abaana n'okubafumbira emmere na buli kimu, nga tamanyi na taata wajjajja ssente ne bizinesi gy'eri tamanyi nayo. And it was okay kubanga taata yabeeranga aprovidinga buli kintu as the father at home. Ekyo kyaggwawo. Essaawa zino yogeddeko ku kagamba lwaki okudivosinga kungi. Njagala ombuulireyo ku bajjajjaabo basatu abali mu nnyumba emu nga baalina emizigo, baalina bwokamunye, baalina amaduuka. There was a fully married. Ng'abaami babalabirira nga bali happy okukuza abaana baabwe. Essaawa eno omukyala afumbirwa, alina emizigo gye, alina bizinesi z'amaduuka, n'ennyumba yeevuga. Wagenda okufuna omwami amwagalako omukwano gw'ekimmemmette, bw'atagufuna ng'asaba divorce. Kubanga biri bye yandibadde yeetaaga ku mwami aba abirina nti asobola okwebeezaawo. Ensonga endala ey'okubeera nti no tebasobola kugatta ssente. Ddala abaami muli bazibu nnyo ku nsonga eyo lwa nsonga emu. Nti ne bw'oba okola, kati twogere ewaffe gye twava. Wano omulimu gw'omukyala wo aba agumanyi, naye era oyinza okuba ng'olinayo akalala k'okola era n'otakamubuulira. Kati ne bw'oba okola, omukyala asobola okubeera mu maka nga bombi bafuluma, omwami agenda okukola n'omukyala agenda okukola. Naye you can't believe ng'abantu tebamanyi na bizinesi zaabwe, oba omwami akola kino oba omukyala akola kibi. Kati omulembe guno muyige okubeera n'amazima ate mubeere transparent for each other. Bw'oba oyagala kuzimba nnyumba Uganda, kati
Jati obuzeebuzeemu ka network kafuuse keemawanga.
ngambye nti bonna abantu abakuzeemu okuva ku 30 be bali nabo babasanga ku nnyanja. Omu yajja kusoma kuyimirizaawo famire ye, omulala yajja kuzimbira maama we kayumba, omulala yajja kuweerera baganda be. Kati transparent eyo yeetaagisa buli muntu amanye nti nno nfuna 50,000 naye zino nja zikozesa bwenti naawe tujja zikozesa bwenti. Kati olwo okukweka okwo obutasigaŋŋana kyekireese obuzibu, buli omu n'akwata akake, ekkaadi y'oli n'agiteeka wali n'agikwakulawo, bw'ayerabira waleti mu kinaabiro n'adduka emisinde. Ate abakyala ne babeera n'effujjo, naye bw'akwata ku kkaadi yo n'alyoka adduka mu Costco n'agula ebintu bya pawundi 3, ogenda okudda ng'abiguze.
Ajat Farida wano mu chat room waliwo agambye Talha yagambye nti if you want to get bankrupt ng'oyagala okuggwamu weewuunye, or should I say bankrupt, show women your money. Oh, she will ask for
Saluha alimba mwina kutuula ku mmeeza, you discuss about it, ne mumanya buli omu ennyingiza n'enfulumya, ate ne mumanya nti oba tutegeka okukola ekintu e Kampala, tusooke tukole ekyaffe ekya famire ekitugatta, naye buli omu bw'aba alina kyayagala okukola ekikye, kubanga omwami essaawa yonna ajja kuwasa omukyalo owokubiri. Naye tikijja kubeera kirungi ennyumba gye mwakoze ababiri ate gy'abaawo oli. Kati omwamu kagaapu ako n'aba ng'alina ebibye ng'omwami bye yeezimba nabyo kuba besikala abaami, olw'okuba balina olumu abaana be bazadde ewalala, baba balina obbakolerera. Naye bw'oba oli open tekikuluma.
Sigarawo Hajjat Farid. Abdul Qadir Kagoya Sheikh Sebo, you have the mic. Ensonga oziwulidde Hajjati bw'azirambise. How do we deal with this dilemma? It looks like trust is the big issue. Are we able?
Assalamu alaikum. It's a big dilemma. I'm sorry I've been coming in and out, the discussion. So there could be some points that I've missed. But it's a very, very interesting debate, and a number of people have made really, really telling points. So But on my side, I'll just I'll look at Islamic point of view, and then from Islamically, I think, as we know, a woman has the right to have her own money and has the right to run her own business and has the right to deal in her wealth and in her money in any way she wishes and she likes and so forth. So that right is there. And in Islam, we say that you cannot force a woman to tell you about her money or to show you or to do. As long as she has her own thing, she can do whatever she wants with her property. So that needs to be clear. But on the other hand, culturally, particularly for those who come from Uganda, a man has the right to deal with the property and to deal with the money, and that's what and we grew up as the previous speaker said, we grew up seeing that. Currently, the trend is that when people get married, women and men, some women and some men, want the transparency and they want to share, and sometimes they want to have joint accounts and all of that. Okay, if you are happy to live like a Westerner, as we live in the West and all of that, okay, that's fine and proper. However, knowing where we come from and knowing the problems we do have as Africans or as people who come from from back home, all of us have as some of the previous speakers mentioned, we have issues and we have problems. A man could have men have families, they have extended families, they have people they need to look after, and also sometimes they may want to get married to a second or a third wife and so forth. Also, a woman, your wife, if you have a wife, that wife would have extended family and they would have people they may want to look after. Now, the thinking is that if or when you have a combined joint account, the thinking is that you could tell your woman that, okay, I have £5,000 here in the account. Now I want to go and help my brother so and so, or I need to go and do this, and she'll be happy, or vice versa. But in reality, those things do not happen often. So if that transparency is there and you have a joint account, believe me, whenever you want, as a man, whenever you want to do something, your wife maybe will resist and she will comment and she will not see things, in the same way as you see them. And the same thing applies to a man. If a man knows that there's £5,000 here, and the wife wants to go and use part of that to go and help her family or do something else, and he will stop her. He will be angry, and there will be conflict. So, in my view, the best thing is, Wallahu alam, is abantu kuberanga. Okay, you could have a joint account where you put money that is going to be used for common things. So you agree. You say, okay, my wife okola 15 omwezi, nze nkola 13 omwezi. Okay, gwe teekamu 5, nja kuteekamu 2,000 oba 15, and the sente zetukozesa. The rest of it, whatever zikozesa as I see fit. And that is my view. Okay, tetusaana buli omu asigale nga alina independence, alina right of spending sente z'alina mu ngeri gy'ayagala. Ayagala ogenda okuwasa, agenda awase, tamala genda gamba mukyala munnange kaakati zino sente zitulina, nja kujjako sente zino ngende mpase. That is not appropriate. So it's a very interesting debate, and I stand to be corrected. Okay, if okay, okay, go ahead, Sheikh. Akazinda nonkakudiza sewa. Ompulira, Sheikh? Hello?
Sheikh, you're muted.
Yeah, babadde banzigyeko wa co-host, so mbadde
babadde akugyeko
babadde bampambye nga sirina wa co-host kakati obwedda
so you're back.
ndi nkwegeza. Barakallahu fikum. Hajjati Farida, Sheikh Abdul Kadir Kawoya omuwulidde. Hajjati Naima Kayira yagamba women fear if they disclose their money, then ezakameza gambye atya story edduse mangu ezakameza zikendeera
ne ezakameza senga baziteeka munnanka senga if you have a because currently tutulina kameza wano nga mu England oba mu Europe senga muteeka mu joint account gye mumanyi nga tumanyi nti ezakameza zigendako buli mwezi, then omukyala she doesn't even have to come akusabe obanga omukyala yeetagwa contributingako naye ajja contributing eyo buli mwezi, that's that, oba buli week or whatever.
Yes, okay. Beka Kiyinja omukono ndaba guli waggulu. Unmute yourself please. Unmute yourself Beka. Mmanyi oleese lutalo kati. In the meantime olutalo lubadde mu chat room wakati wa Talha, Sheikh Talha n'abakyala. Mukyala Rahma says brother Talha, women know how to make their own money. A lot of men this generation bayingira ddamu Stingy Men's Association. Sister Naima mpoze uwo kyali z'akameza. Naam, Beka.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh sebo.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
Kugamba nze ndeeta olutalo wano sebo.
Bana atuyamba okululwana baga emigo gize mingi abakyala they are saying.
Abakyala kugamba omanyi the problem we have is that the ladies of today kugamba should I call it culture shock or something? Tuli mumbela nti we want the two sides. We want the religious, we want to actually three. We want the religious side of things, we want the culture side of things, and then we want the westernized side of things. Kati, ladies, unfortunately, you would never find a lady that builds a house for her and her husband. You know, most ladies when they build or when they're planning, they plan for the kids. Me and my so ladies enter relationships when they expect a man to actually disappear at some point. You know, it's like I think when you get in the beginning,
we disappear Beka cases
not all of us, not all of us. I think this should be actually before you get into a marriage or a relationship with someone. This is a topic that should be one of the topics that's discussed, because I know so many people literally they plan. If we enter marriage and you're all planning your own thing. When I put this poster in the youth group today, someone put they did some research and they put let me read this post to you. It's very sad, but if it's true, I think we need to have this conversation in the beginning. Topic. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. I found it. Your post is in Agamba. Lack of economically attractive men are to blame for the decline in marriage rates, you know. So I think the issue is we enter marriages when we're not finding the right person in terms of financial, you know.
Beka, Laila Kadu says diaspora men tebaleka za kameza, which seems Go on, please.
You know, so the issue is, it's a conversation that we need to have, but both parties are scared to have this conversation because normally they're both hiding something, you know. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. Naye Kati, I think the challenge we have is that fenna agenda kati waliwo kikonyeko hajati yagambe to extended family. We all came here fenna tuli ku journey. We're on a journey whereby someone is here, I have to look after my grandparents, I have to look after my judges back home. And at the same time, the lady also comes with those issues as well, extended family. At the same time, you have kids here in this country. So I think we need to have more of these topics. Kumanga, right now, so many people are here, but they're burning. They cannot share what they're feeling because they know someone is gonna basically relate it to them. Taraka, which so people there are certain conversations that we need to have as a community, but some of them are taboos. Kubankati, us men, tulina expectations tulina within society, you know, tulina okubanga tulabirira, we have to be looking after that family, you know. But at the same time, men, they also, sorry, ladies as well, there are things they want, but at the same time they're not willing to meet halfway. You know, the ladies want you to meet halfway, or even actually at the same time they want you to meet to kind of like come all the way through, or full swing. If you know biteka buli kimu gwakisasulira ezize okiteka at the same time olina okuleekeza akameza. So it's a thing whereby it's a conversation. I think my advice is both parties need to have a conversation, sit down and talk. Buli omu ateekewo ebibye ku mmeeza, but unfortunately ogenda sanga ti omusajja abadde alabirira buli kimu, omukyala agenda kujja n'ebibye nga bye bisinga obungi ku mmeeza, awo atandika okukola ki, okufuna obwogerezi. Kati awo then the challenges are
Beka just stay on kubanga Nuru Nakitto akomyewo alabika olinawo omutakudde nadda n'obukambwe olinawo okutte ku kizimba. Nuru Nakitto.
Alaikum salam. The person who is talking just said that the problem is that ladies or women, when we are planning, we only plan like you can build a house and say, this house for me and my children. That is true what he said. But the reason I think why that normally happens to most ladies, they do things for their own, not putting the husband out of their box, whatever they are planning, because they know men can easily go and marry again. So the women don't want to share their efforts they've done maybe to build this house with another woman. That's why they keep saying this house I'm building is for me and my children. Without the man, because the man can easily go out anytime. But if you decide to join with the woman in that house with the children, that's fine, because anyway, you are the father of the children. But normally that comes because of that. But I agree with him where he says we need to put everything. It goes back to the same things in trust and how you love each other, because like the other first guy said, you might be married just for business, maybe for papers. Then there's no way you can share things with, and women also do it. They can go for a man because of papers and their intention is different. Yeah. So it's either way, the way you know each other, do we with each other? Are we just for papers? And there are people who do these things knowing we are just together because of papers, and everybody is doing their own thing and they just share the bills and that's it. And nobody bothers each other.
Laila Kaddu agambiddewo nti bakumuwereka Fanta. Very impressed with your comment on that. Becca.
Sebu. Muwulidde kyagambye naye kwegamba, I think what we need to do is literally, if if we are building everything as a unit, you know, kati omukyala, then the thing is culture. We have a culture shock, you know. Culture shock is a major problem. Omukyala ye akola bibi, and most parties amami bebakola ki, omwami yaba abeera alabirira ewaka, yaba alabirira buli kimu, yakola buli kimu, n'omukyala naye ng'alina ebibye byakola. Okitegedde, kati the challenge is no one is willing to bring things to the table. Tulina okunoonya engeri gye tugonza emitima, negigonda negirekera awo kubanga gikaluba ne tubanga sobola ffenna okuleeta ebintu ku mmeeza. Naye the problem is ladies need to understand that men face, naddala in the diaspora, there are challenges that men face. Si kubawolereza over anything, naye there are challenges that men face. You know, abakyala they can get balina byasobola okufuna okubayambako, naye at the same time buli musajja yenna alina okumaking sure nti nno bw'ojjamu relationship olina okumaking sure nti nno ebintu bye byogenda okukola ki, gwagenda okubanga olabirira omukyalo ono, ne bwe tubanga tuli mu diaspora. Kati kiri eri mukyala okulaba nti oba yajja kugamba nti nzije I meet you halfway, oba tukole bweti, naye nga kwegamba buli omu ku beginning, buli omu alina kunoonya level ye. Bw'owasa omukyala omugambe nze nkwagala okole kino na kino na kino, tukole bwe tuti, okitwala oba nedda. N'omukyala naye ajja agambe nti njagala okole kino na kino na kino, onaakikola oba nedda. Once we have that, ne tuyingira mu relationships nga tuli tukisootinze, I think problem ejja kubeera resolved.
Barakallahu fikum Sebu. Isma Sebu mbadde nkusaba to watching last part, you know, which I think is going to be mbadde mbasaba mugezeeko mugyetegereze bulungi, because there are about 2 important points. Some of them might sound controversial mu context y'Obusiraamu, but once you listen to them, then you'll see how this opens up a whole new chapter. Twatandise mu kwetegekera obufumbo, we went into the marriage itself, but now what if things don't work out and then you have to go down the route of divorce? Where do the finances stand? Please, Isma, if you're ready, if you can just play that last segment of the video. Watch it and then we can take it up from there.
To the topic of divorce and my advice for spouses in case they're going through a divorce. Now, I hope, inshallah, none of you have to go through a divorce. And if you have gone through a divorce, I hope you're in a better position today. Now, if you are going through a divorce, there is one point that I would like to stress here, and that is make sure you are fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're dealing with your partner or your ex-partner. Don't treat the other side based on your feelings towards the other side. Rather, treat them how you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to treat them. You'll always end up as a winner if you do things this way, in this life and the next. Specifically, what I want to emphasize here is that if you have an agreement with your spouse that your marriage is an Islamic marriage, and you all should have this agreement if you are Muslims and you're getting married, that you're married according to Islamic law, and divorce happens and you see that according to the law of the country in which you live, you'll get more money if you follow that law versus Islamic law. And the country that you live in, the courts don't recognize the Islamic marriage contract that you have with your spouse. So you decide that you're going to follow the laws of the country that you live in and completely ignore the Islamic marriage contract that you have with your spouse. Then whatever money that you get that is above what you were entitled to according to the Islamic marriage contract, in the eyes of Islam, you have stolen from your ex. To be even more blunt, you are a thief for taking that money. Even if the court gave you that money, because you had an agreement, you had an Islamic marriage contract with your spouse, and you chose not to honor it, taking advantage of the fact that the courts in your country don't recognize that contract. And keep in mind here, whether or not your spouse was good to you is completely irrelevant to your obligations to honor your word and to honor the Islamic marriage contract that you had with your spouse. And I got news for you. Typically, when people get divorced, they don't think highly of the person they're divorcing. Typically, they think that the other side was a jerk to them and that they are the victims. Very rarely does anyone say, oh yeah, that was completely on me. I was the real jerk in this relationship. No, it's always the other side. So typically when people get divorced, they think the other side treated them badly. So just because you think the other side treated you badly, that is no excuse for you not to honor a contract that you have with them. If the laws of divorce in Islam only applied when the two people getting a divorce thought highly of one another, then they would almost never be applied. Remember, 50 years from now, we're all going to be dead or we're going to be close to checking out of this world. So you want to make sure that when you check out, you don't have a bunch of luggage that you have to carry with you that you don't want to carry. And there is no worse luggage to take with you to the afterlife than money that you took that you were not entitled to. And on this topic, and I know what I'm about to say will be unacceptable for a lot of different people, especially depending on their culture. So you want to tread very carefully here, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to get a prenup, especially if you have significant assets going into a marriage. And basically what I mean by a prenup is a contract that the country that you live in will recognize that basically splits the assets between you and your spouse in case of divorce according to Islamic law. So you wouldn't put on the contract that it's according to Islamic law, but you would divvy it up according to Islamic law and you would put it in a contract and you would make sure that this contract that you put this in is recognized by the laws of the country that you live in. Now, hopefully you never need it. Obviously, you approach the matter like you approach insurance. You hope you never need it, but if you do need it, it's rather useful. I know this is not an easy conversation to have, but it's one that can potentially save you a lot of headache in the future. I hope none of you have to go through divorce. If you are going through a divorce, make sure you are fearing Allah in the way you treat the other person. And if you have already gone through a divorce, I hope you're in a better spot right now. I hope you find the person that completes you if you haven't already. And if you are married, I hope that you live a long and healthy, happy life together.
Those are argument points that I wanted to bring to your attention. Abdul Karim Mugabinda I wanted to have some different voices. We will do the usual calm, let's talk policy, where we are just going to randomly get your hands. Oh, Hasfa is up there. Hasfa, I'll have you very briefly. The points when it gets to the point of divorce, or to Allah, and two, not to forget even the good in case you decide to kuva ku sharia y'obusiramu n'oddukira mu court because you're going to receive much more money, anything that is over and above what sharia would have allocated for you, ebegenda kufuuka haram for you to have. That is food for thought, absolute, and I wanted it to come out very clearly. And then the other thing is prenup. What prenup means, so I'll just explain it. Naddala ku bantu abagagga, film stars, celebrities, batuuka ng'ebyobugagga balina bingi. Mu kubeera n'ebyobugagga ebingi, bwe baba bati banda bakufumbiriganwa, they agree on if our relationship breaks up, bwe tuba tubigenda ku divorcinga, buli omu bye yajja nabyo byajja okufuluma nabyo. Oba bino biba ebiti ebyange biri eno na bino biri eno. It might be, if it is recognized in the country that you are in, that there is nothing in Sharia that might actually stop that. So while it opens up a whole new area just in terms of discussion, it simply means nti tumaze okwesanga mu mbeera ez'abayaayi, and abayaayi bali side bali ku njuyi zombi, babere basajja babere bakazi, people coming in nga balina interests ze balina. Because of that, there might be grounds for that. Sheikh Abdul Qadir Kawoya, Hasfa, then I come to you, Sheikh. I'm sure you'll have a religious aspect to that. Abdul Karim, don't worry, I'll come to you. Hasfa, can you unmute yourself, please?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you for this topic.
Ameen.
Brother Abdul Karim Mugabe mentioned something to do with love. When you love somebody, certain things may not necessarily come into play. Kubanga, you need wholeheartedly. Now, for instance, when you talk about a prenup, if you're signing a prenup with somebody, it says that I am with you, but I'm not really entirely with you 100%. I am with you, but I think in the future we might separate. I am with you, but I'm scared in the future. Maybe you'll strangle me, you'll kill me, you're going to take my assets.
And it does happen.
And I mean, it does happen.
You see on Thursday, you see how
there's some sound that is bleeding. Is that Uma connected?
Zaidi, that's Brother Zaidi.
Brother Zaidi.
What is he talking about?
Zaidi, mute yourself.
You are bleeding in.
Kati buli signing a prenup kugamba okiyingiddemu naye tokiyingiddemu wholeheartedly kuba omanyi nti omuntu g'oli naye somewhere in the future tajja kubeera naawe. So there and then you've set a precedent nti there's going to be issues of money in the future because you've signed it at the beginning.
But the issue that this sheikh actually raises, that's why he said this might sound a bit controversial, and he laid it out. If there is an issue to do with too much wealth involved, where in case of a breakup, the likelihood, if a situation comes up where a woman decides to leave Sharia, the likelihood of getting more money is higher in comparison to okuyita mu Sharia nga bwe yali muwadde. If that has been established, considering the rules and laws in the country that you're in, a provision for that might not be haram to consider. But love or marriage is supposed to be a social contract between two consenting adults, where love actually, I think, should be the guiding principle. But of course, yes, go ahead, Hasfa.
No, so if I may chime in a little
bit. Please,
yeah,
go
Muslim, If you were married, whether we get divorced or whatever, you still get a portion of your husband's wealth. Never you are here, if you get divorced when you're here in the US, you still get a percentage of that man's wealth. So if you sign the prenup, well, that is a different case. Now, yeah, if you are really married, whether you are afraid nti ayinza okulekawo oba tayinza kulekayo, ne bw'obanga muli legally married, you still, that person, your partner, muba musazeewo ku divorcing, is going to get a percentage of what you owe. So bw'otya nti agenda kuwasisaamu omukazi omulala kabubeere busiraamu, oba ne bw'oba weefiisizza, still aba ajja kugenda atwaleko a portion of your wealth. That's how I look at it. So at the end of the day, as I say, when you're in that marriage contract, no muntu go yagala and you go in wholeheartedly, you discussing at the center, nemanya, this is my contribution and this is what we'll do and this is my limit. You're going to build a one more. Okay, I also am going to save money. Chitambula bulungi. Never banga tochirimu wholeheartedly. I think you end up getting problems.
Sheikh Abdul Qadir Kawoya Sebo jangu then nja kujewa Sheikh Ali. Sheikh Ali.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Nabadisiriwa kudda naye kinkomezaawo ekigambo kya Sheikh kyakoze kyayogedde ate n'alowooza nti kiyinza okuleeta omutawaana mu bantu. Njagadde clarifying 2 points. Naye nga sina clarifying point eyo eya Sheikh, njagala okukomentinga ku bigambo bya mwanyinaffe byayogedde. Hafsa. Ekisooka, ekigambo ekyokugamba nti omuntu bw'asayininga prenup oba bw'ajogerako nga tebannaba kufumbirwa, kitegeeza nti nkuwasa naye tugenda kola ki, wayinza okubaawo divorce mu maaso eyo and all of that. Ku lwange divorce yo era kyobala amateeka weegali kimanyiddwa. Obusiraamu bugamba nti bw'obanga owasizza omuntu okufumbirwa ofumba obwo buli permanent, kyokka buyinza okuendinga for one reason or another. Divorce is part eya culture, is part of our religion. Tugimanyi era omuntu wofumbirwa nga toyize ku mateeka ga divorce wabaawo omutawaana, oteekwa okukola ki, oteekwa okugamanya. N'olwekyo kwegamba okukyogerako si kyeki kireeta kubanga bwekiri.
Omungabe tubeera mu mukwano omuntu guba gukwokya nga okulowoozaako nti biyinza okutabuka kizibuzibu.
We have to be realistic and we have to know that. Ontegedde nti tuyinza ng'okufa, abantu baagala kwogera kufa era kituzibuwalira naye tukimanyi nti at any moment oyinza ogenda. Ontegedde tuyinza okufa at any time. Ne divorce nayo bwetyo bweri. Point endala gye njala okukola egamba nti ki, agambye nti omuntu bw'obanga mu divorcinze omukazi alina right ku ssente z'omusajja. Mu Busiraamu ekyo it's not si kituufu kwegamba entirely. Olwokubanga mu Busiraamu divorce, omuntu bwa divorcinga omuntu, right y'omukazi yokka gy'alina ng'abadde ali divorced, alina okulabirirwa ku ngeri gy'abadde alabirirwamu, otegedde okumala ebbanga erigereddwa. Bw'abanga bw'abanga abadde ali lubuto tulina omulabirira paka lwakola ki, lwazaala. And so forth. Kakati okwegamba kimanyiddwa, it's not more than that. Problem gye tulina mu Busiraamu ne mu systems endala zijja kuwa percentage ku bintu by'omusajja bye yeekoledde. Ontegedde awatali contribution yodde ofumbiddwa lwaleero oba myaka 2 myaka 3 ng'abadde akoze billions and billions of sente, bw'ojja bw'omudivorcinga ojja kwesingana ng'ojja kutwala ki, okutwala 50% of his wealth. Era ky'obulaba nga Sheikh oli abadde agamba nti bw'okikola ekyo oba mubbi. Obusiraamu tebukukkiriza ezo sente z'otutte si sente zo. Kakati n'olwekyo kwegamba njala clarifying that point nga sinabagenda ku prenup agreement kwegamba. Now prenup Sheikh gyayogeddeko mu butuufu ffenna ng'abasiraamu naddala abagenda mu bufumbo kati ng'owangalira mu nsi etalamuza amateeka g'abusiraamu kitukakatako okola prenup eyo. Otegedde lwaki oteekemu nti nga era Sheikh bw'agambye bwebanga obaddewo ensonga nga twawukanye bwembanga ndi lubuto bwembanga ndi lubuto ajja kufuna ssente bweziti ontegedde bwembanga siri lubuto nja ojja kufuna ssente bweziti wezibiriramu kwegamba nti omuntu yeetaaga £3,000 per month ojja kufuna £6,000 oba £2,000 per month according to the to your level nga wembadde muwangaala nga kikole kibeeremu era ekyo kibanga tekikontana n'amateeka gaki n'amateeka ga busiraamu. On the contrary kiba kikonfaminga nti mmwe mwembiriri muli basiraamu era mukkiriza Katonda era mwagala okuba nti divorce yammwe eri based on Islamic principle. Nga mmaliriza akantu mu busiraamu tugamba ng'omuntu ateerebbwa tewali kigaana musajja kuwa mukazi more than her right. Otegedde oyinza okukola ki oyinza omuwa more than what she deserved or what she is entitled to nga mukoze mu divorces. Kyokka ekyo kiri ku musajja. Kati n'olwekyo bwe bakola prenup bw'abanga omusajja ayagadde ng'ayagala okubeera generous and all of that ayinza okugamba nti okay 20%, 10% of my wealth, 5%, which is above what you'll be entitled to bw'obanga ogoberedde amateeka gaki g'obusiraamu. Nga mmaliriza njagala bannange tukimanye nga Katonda bw'agamba mu Qur'an kwegamba ti agamba nti a'udhu billahi minash shaitani rrajim. Okay, wama kana limu'minin wala mu'mina idha qada Allahu amran an yakuna lahumul khiyaratu min amrihim. Omusiraamu omukkiriza omukazi oba omusajja tebalina right yonna oba tekibagwanira tekisaana when Allahu azza wa jalla abanga ayogedde ekintu akisazeewo alamudde oba Rasulu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mubawaka Katonda alamudde and for you then to come and have a say nze mbadde ndaba bwenti tulina okugoberera amateeka ga Mungu bwe kibanga omusajja ayagadde okola ki okuwa more that is up to him. And as far as I'm concerned the prenup agreement tena mutawana gonna naddala mu nsi muno in order to ensure that tukola ki tugoberera amateeka ga Katonda era kyekimu n'ekigambo kyekiraamo obanga olaama ebintu bikole ki bigabibwe mu busiraamu. Olwaleero obanga wasiza omukyala n'ogaana okulama oba nagamba tolaama ebigalibwe mu busiraamu etegeeza nti bw'ofa abasika bonna baba bavuddemu okugjako omukyala. Everything will go to mukyala era ajja kuba obwo bujja kola ki nawe bujja kuba nga bubbi wallahu a'lam. Musanga
Not at all, Sheikh. Barakallahu fikum. Definitely having a discussion around this. Sheikh Ali Muwanda, sebo jangu, kubanga maze okuyingira mu kanyomero kafaaka, thank you. Tugende tumaze okutandika okayingira mu eddakiika zaako. Sheikh sebo genda mu maaso. Impressions zose.
Barakallahu fikum. Sheikh Kayira Nebaslambo. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tukusanyukidde Sheikh.
Nze mukadde wange basebo ne banyawa bampuliriza mpulidde nga agamba nti tuli ku Facebook oba oliawo ne ku YouTube live simanyi audience enkanawa naye whatever audience kansubire nti oba oliawo mumpulira abamanyi mumanyi abatamanyi kyamukisa mubi. Sebo Sheikh.
Naam sebo.
Ensonga gyetadde mu ddiira badde nnungi nnyo twavudde nga tukutte ku marriage to end this up nga tutuuse ku stage ya marriage webera nti what happens if we divorce. Naye nga sebo okusinziira ku Islam amateeka g'Obuyisiraamu nkitwala nti gali universal. Gatugaidinga pre-marriage amateeka we gali okulootera tunayingira bufumbo negatugaidinga during obufumbo era negatugaidinga bulungi nnyo omusiraamu okulotyanga otuusa okwawukana mu bufumbo singa obadde mufu. Amateeka go tugalina mu suratul Baqara netuba ne sura namba nga eyitibwa suratul Talaq Allah yes. So in terms of okugamba nti amateeka gatulamula obulungi ng'oli musiraamu ayagala eddiini ye nti nenamuleetya tetuli short of them mu Qur'an ne mu hadith ez'ekitiibwa Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, tulina cultural norms ze twamigratinga nazo nga ffe Abaganda oba ne cultures endala zajja ne ziba ne cultures zaazo. To discuss nakati ku issue ya prenuptial agreements. These prenuptial agreements ziri known era nze nazitegeerako nga nze mu nsi eno eya West. Tetuzirina mu Africa, mu Asia tebiriiyo. However, tugipeesinga nnyo olw'okuba essente zino zituforcinga oga nti twaki tukola amateeka gano aga prenuptial tukola agreements zaffe before in case we divorce. Nitwerabira nti ffe ng'Abasiraamu Nabbi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam yagala okufumbirwa okuwasa Hazrat Hadija yalina essente nga zali nnyingi nnyo. Weewaawo Nabbi sallallahu alaihi wasallam agenda okuwasa abakazi abalala era Allah nga amugaggawazizza ng'essente azirina. Naye mu talaq oba mu marriage yayina bwe tuba tuddira Abasiraamu nga ffe bagamba nti tugoberera ye era nga tuli ku kifaananyi kye Allah kye yatuwanga bwe yatugamba nti laqad kana lakum fi rasulillahi uswatun hasana. Nti mwina ekyokulabirako amakula mu bulamu bwa Rasul. Ye yakola atya? Yalina omugagga Hadija. Baakola endagaano ezo nti munnaye Hadija oba ne Muhammad ojja naye in case twawukanye tunaagamba tutya emaali eno. Okyulya taata sewo. Tugamba nti bubedde oba bwansimbi ne mu bulamu bwa Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam ekintu kyaliyo ekyokulabirako tukirina. Kakati sebo nga njagala ogenda ku conclusion ya discussion yange oba contribution yange ku kitu discussing olwaleero.
Yes.
Kya prenuptial naffe we had a similar discussions earlier on. Oli yaleta kibuuzo tugamba should we ng'omusiraamu okkirizibwa era obadde oyogerako ku kitaki nze nti mu mateeka twali tuziyiza kubeera ne such arrangements singa omuntu asazeewo kikola. However, bwe baali baddamu era ku mulundi gulo lyaga nti kiri discouraged tugenda amateeka ga Busiraamu bw'oba oli Musiraamu era n'Obusiraamu nga bukulamudde Qur'ani weeri emigabo yagigabana bulungi eyogera kukwata ku talaq neyogera ku idda neyogera na buli kimu na buli mbeera zonna kinebe mba temwawukanye singa oli aba afudde bufi kyekiteekeddwa okukolebwa Qur'ani etugaidinga thoroughly. Kati maliriza nga ngamba tulina abafa bali e Uganda tulina kya agreements tezina no nawe olala wonna naye ndooza as a precaution kuba bafunye akasente kamwe kisinzira ku imaani yo noganze kulwalira wadde nzirina seetaga gamba nti ngenda kukola prenuptial agreement nabbi gyatakola ngende bwe batwa twawukanye ffe sharia ebyo tukolako. Wakhiru dawana
Barakallahu. Ng'okyali awo wennyini nga tonagenda regarding topic gye tubaddeko ebadde ya financial disclosure between couples. Do you think in your way, in your own assessment, couples basaanye okuba nti bajja ne bateeka ku mwanjo epapula ku mmeeza buli omu alaba ensimbi za munne nga bwe zifaanagana naddala ku bali eno kubanga tulinga aba bazze ku mbeera kubanga audience nene audience erimu waliwo abali e Uganda waliwo abali America waliwo this is a global audience effectively. So do you think wasaanye okubaawo transparency mu finances wakati wa couples?
Essebo mu bufumbo naddala wakati w'abafumbo nga si business partners oba nti si just relatives together. Mu bufumbo ekikulembera mu bino ekisooka erina kubeera trust. Then with that trust tubanza butaba transparency. Lwaki nkireeta bwe ntyo? Kinabbi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ze kyokulabirako kyennyina era ffenna ekyokulabirako amakulu gye tuli kitulina okugoberera. Yeeyisanga atya? Oba sahaba ridwanullah alaihim abamugoberera beeyisanga batya in terms of finances. sharing okumanya ne transparency ate yegonza obufumbo ennyo. Nze nebaza Katonda alhamdulillah nti nze wange mu bufumbo bujana ne mwanyinaze ne mukyala wange gwe nnyina wano ndi transparent gyali naye ali transparent gyendi. Ekyo kigonza obufumbo kimuntu ajja kulowoleza nti olina naye nga tembutuufu tolina. Nawe mulowooze nti oba alina nnyingi nga naye teziriiyo. So bwe kibeera naye ate kyenjagala twayawula waliwo mulina okugatta ne wabawo ne mulina ate okwawula. Ebizibu byawukana. Olya taata. Ebizibu ebibye ng'omukyala wo ayina abeewuwe ayina ebizibu ebibye. Naawe ng'omusajja olina ebizibu ebibyo n'ebya famire yo. Ate nabo bagatta ebyowaka eby'omu maka ge mulimu n'abaana bamwe mu buzadde ebi direct to the family oba gye tuyita co-family. Mu nsonga ya co-family oba yagabanga toyagala ng'oli mufumbo ayagala obufumbo be successful olina okubeera transparent ku ssente ez'akameeza ku nfunayo. Muno lwajja okubalirira muno lwajja okutegeera n'obufumbo bwe buyinza okutambula obulungi. So and the view the transparency yetaagisa.
Barakallahu fikum Sheikh.
Sheikh
Jazakumullahu
Kayira.
Naam, Sheikh
Let me come back.
Engeda kuleta Abdul Karim Mugabi. Kari Sheikh kakoma.
Just to comment on if you go with your Sheikh. Just to clarify a point. The point I just clarifying ekitugambisa nti abantu era rather than even discouraging it in the West, I insist I would encourage it in the West. Lwaki? Olwokubanga ffenna nga bwe tugambye twagala okugoberera amateeka sharia, amateeka ga Katonda ffenna tugamanye era weegali. Naye tuwangaalira mu ggwanga eritakola ki? Eritakozesa mateeka ago. In order to guarantee nti tugakolerako tukola agreement eyo. Agreement eyawukana ku mateeka wabula confirming emenga sure nti amateeka ag'obusiraamu gagobereddwa. So in my view, it's even is advisable and we should encourage it. That's number one. Okay. Number two, bwe tugamba nti ki ya subhanallah point yange egenza kwegamba nga yeah, point njala bidde mbadde ngenda okola kwegamba ku nsonga naye nga mu butuufu kwegamba wadde nabbi teyakola first nabbi teyali talekwa kikola era nabbi yali nga teyawangaalira ye yali subhanallah Qur'ani we n'amateeka ga talaq ag'okuta gakka era abantu baali tebagogoberera kwegamba. That's why abantu baali azamanya abakyala be batadde baali nga oluusi omukyala bw'afa bamugoba mu nnyumba oluusi nga tebalina kyamuwa amateeka ne gakka era ge baagoberera. Naye kati ffe tuwangaira in Britain amateeka tegagobererwa n'olwekituuka okumakinga sure nti tuteekawo something ekitu encouraginga ogoberera amateeka ago mu ngeri ki? mu ngeri ennungi. And subhanallah, and I feel nti ekintu ekyo okakolebwako. The second point, naddala ompulira? The second point, the second point kyenjagala okukola ku bantu naddala bamasheekh ababadde nga bakola mu communities balabye ebintu ebiguddewo, tulabye divorces nyingi mu basiraamu, maka gaffe ag'abasiraamu, bantu abasiraamu. Believe me, ebintu bwe bituuka ng'abantu baawukana, wallahi abantu abasinga obungi ebirungi babyerabira. Omusajja neerabira ebirungi omukazi byamukolera ne gye baayita n'emitawaana gye baayita, n'omukazi yeerabira omusajja ebirungi byamukolera n'abeera nga takyamulaba nti muntu, era n'abeera nga ali ready, otegedde okuba nti atwala ebintu bye byonna oba atwala haafi y'ebintu bye. Bw'omugamba ku by'obusiraamu at that time agamba obusiraamu tebunkolera. Tuli wano, tuli Bungereza, amateeka gatulamula ebyo tebinkolera. Ng'akola ki? ng'agenda mu kooti wallahi nga munamubyolabye ng'abantu bamayumba oba bakoze eki agoberera amateeka agali wano n'olwekyo prenup protecting omusajja senga ng'omukazi abadde nga kakoze eki tayagadde kugoberera amateeka ga busiraamu ate era making sure nti omukyala tajja kolaki tajja kujeemera Katonda kubanga tetwagala ku encouraging abantu gondera kujeemera Katonda n'olwekyo nze ndabira ddala nti prenup wadde rasute egikola abasahaba tebagikola n'olwakubanga tuwangalira mu Bungereza oba mu America mutegedde Uganda maybe teyeetagisa in other parts of the world teyeetagisa kubanga abantu amateeka gaabwe tegakaka tegalinga gaagali ki ngaagali mu West. Wallahu a'lam.
Barakallahu fikum. Abdul Karim Mugabi ndabye Sheikh Muwanda akomyewo. Abdul Karim Mugabi kwanza ndoze ripato ne Sheikh amuregea naye wedda namunonyeza nga yabuze amazina ajja. Abdul Karim Mugabi se omukono gwo.
Okay, so just to chip in omukulu ya so kuvaako prenups ne Uganda zeetagisa. For instance, case study eribwet tulabye abagagga banje Uganda bagenda ne bafa kubanga tebalese documentation. Prenup jengendo correlatingira eri in terms of DNA. Amala okufa bwati ne basomba abaana abakileyinga babi. To my view, I would say if we are talking about prenup, let's encourage it. We never sina kufa, preserve my DNA. Ola claiming anti nono mwana waffe mumutwale for test. You will be saving a lot of hassles within the family.
Now tuli ku opening a minefield empya nayo mu debate yenu.
That's my view.
Gabe Uganda tebaliyo weyagadde katebere introduced nga DNA naye bwe tutagira naye kati all of a sudden DNA kati Uganda kajanja. In fact, nali ku story emuje nakora which was very interesting on DNA. Omusajja omukazi yazaara abarongo naye nga abarongo abo nga buli mwana ayina kitaawe. Nga abarongo bazaayiddwa wamu naye nga buli mwana ayina kitaawe. Kakati sharia interpretation ojja kuba olina okuleeta bw'ogireeta naye nga ne DNA emaze okulaga baali basajja babiri nga bakayanira abaana. Ne bagira DNA buli omu neemugabirako owuwe naye nga baali barongo bazaalibwa wamu. How that happened, Allahu a'lam. Sheikh Muwanda sebo then kendete Sheikh amulege. Olabika obadde olina ribato akatebereka kaleete tumara okukawulira then tugende wa Sheikh amulege.
Naam sahaba. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi.
Salaam wa rahmatullah.
Ndowooza ku mulundi guno kanteekeko n'akafaananyi abatamanyi oba olyawo balabire basebo ne bannyabo yenze mbadde nkumyewo katono yenze Sheikh Ali Muwanda Kayongo. Sheikh ensonga gyetubaddeko ebadde ya prenuptial agreements. Era nga wetukirabye ffena tuli ku page emu saawukanako ne ku Sheikh Kawoya kyagamba. Kubanga tujjukire obusiraamu butugamba bulungi nti atiu llaha wa atiu rasul wa ulil amru minkum. Guidance Islam gyetuwa okugoberera Katonda okugoberera Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ulil amri minkum. Kati buli mujja abawangalidde Bungereza abawangalidde America oba mu nsi yonna w'oba oli oyina ulil amri minkum abatututte amateeka ga government agagavaninga ensonga zonna ne divorce mu gitwalidde. Kati bwe tubanga tuwangalidde mu West eno gye tuli nga tulina prenuptial agreements ng'ezimu ziyamba naddala mu bufumbo gavumenti ezimu zazikiriza nti abatusoma batutte option eyo tekigaanibwa. Naffe mu Buisiramu era nga binakigambyeko we had a discussion over this topic nga tuli ku essentially mu Busiraamu kikkirizibwa to have a prenuptial agreement. Debate yaggwa tukkiriziganyiza nti mu butuufu it's okay to have a prenuptial agreement. Tewali teeka mu Busiraamu byoba omenye singa oba optinze to prenuptial agreement. But for example, avudde waggulu atuwadde ekya DNA. DNA ifuuse problem. Awamu bagamba very encouraged. Naye nga Nabbi sallallahu alaihi wasallam yatugamba nti omwana mu nju mwazaalibwa abeera wa nnyumba eyo. Ye DNA y'Obusiraamu eyagonze eyo ensonga. Naye munnange mu West gye tuwangalidde ng'Abasiraamu era abamu baagala ba insisting even to have it. Omuntu aleka wiru nga mwekiri Amina kutasolinga nacho.
Shemuwanda sebo I'm only stopping you kubanga tulina okumaliriza ku top of the hour. And ninaye emikono ebiri waggulu Imam Kasozi ne Sheikh Kamulege mba webale nnyo sebo barakallahu fikum.
Neyanza sebo kyekyo tuli kupejjemu ne bannanga bonna kyegadde okugamba.
Barakallahu fikum. Sheikh Kamulege sebo wa alaykum salam. Wenda ndakunoonyeza dda then ndete Imam Kasozi tuwulire nazonzi.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalamu ala rasulillah.
Amin.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ngana Kayira ebigambo birinye nkandago mu mbeere mobe. Abadde simanyi nti binatuuka eno yonna naye.
Obwedda gwo waganye okujja.
Allahu akbar.
Kakati Sheikh
kutte. Naye mu bwangu ennyo. Nsooka ogamba nti byetugamba mbunne Uganda tebiriiyo tuli mu kwerimba kubanga recently ndabye kuba bakyala nga baawukana n'abaami ne batwala babbaabwe mu makooti nga basiraamu ne batwala mu makooti olw'okubanga baagala okufuna ebingi ebyaki naye ekyasinga okunkwasa ekyansesa ate nekinkwasaamu ennaku nti gundi eyo gye mwogerako eya prima gundi agreement baali ndowooza omusajja yali mu bwongo bwe yakiteekamu nti omukyalo ono wadde muwasizza naye tazze kufumba wange wabula azze kunoonya ki n'abaako ebintu bye yatwala ewa looya ne babidetailinga n'amuwa n'asayininga omukyala yasayininga by'ataasoma kuba bagenda okutuuka mu kkooti nga omukyala omwami amugamba nti leeta fayiro yo gy'olina nange ndeeta eyange bye twakkiriziganyaako nga tufumbiriganiddwa namugamba tetulina kye twakkiriziganyaako namugamba leeta fayiro yo ogenda okuleeta fayiro gye yamuteresa nga yasayininga ye yennyini omukyala nti nzikiriza bwe tuba twawukana kino na kino bye ntwala ebisigadde bya musajja kati ku nsonga eyo kwe nsinzira ne nga nti bannange tetulina kyetunulinga awo kubanga nga kojjange bwe yagambye nti oli bwe butuuka ku by'okwawukana akubuulira butereevu n'agamba ebya Katonda wo by'oŋŋamba eby'obusiraamu byo biteeke ku bbali tulina kukola kino ate ng'ebyo mbirabyeko wano ku Bulaaya wennyini oli n'agamba nti tombuulira bya busiraamu byo nga muli mu nsonga mutudde mugezaako okutereeza n'omugamba bannange Allah agamba bw'ati mu Quran n'agamba ssebo seeka eby'obusiraamu byo tukola ki tombuulira owulidde kati omuntu bw'atuuka ku ekyo oba olina kumugamba bugambe please kola ky'owulira gwe omutima gwo kye gugamba kye gwagala ky'oba ogenda nakyo naye nze binnemye.
Sheikh ku topic ey'olwaleero amaka basaanya abantu okuba nga basharinga information.
Yes, ekyo kyonzikiriziganya nakyo kubanga nze nange kennyini ndi mufumbo mbazeemu emyaka egy'abaana abamu abali kuno owulidde n'okubasinga abawana bendabye kuno abasinga obungi bali mu myaka gye mmaze mu bufumbo abalala n'obufumbo bwange bubasinga obukulu naye mu kyo mulimu ekintu kimu buli bwe mutuula ku mmeeza ne mutegeeragana it doesn't matter omusajja ajja kuwasa ajja kukola ki naye wano mutuule ku mmeeza buvunaanyizibwa bw'omusajja okulabirira amaka ekyo bw'onookiba okituuseeko n'okitegeera gwe omusajja nti yes omukyala akola naye nze nina okusasula ennyumba paundi 150 buli mwezi oba 2 buli mwezi then nze nina okuteekawo ez'akameeza bagule ebyokulya byawaka then nze nja okwambaza omukyala wange nze nja okwambaza abaana bange ebisigadde bye mugenda okukola awo mutuule ku mmeeza ekyo kisooka okiteeke mu mayindi zo aleese zifaanana zikyaleese naye nga kyo kitadde mu mayindi zo nti ebyo gw'olina okubikola ekyo kye kikufuula omusajja tekikufuula omusajja buli wootabikola ebyo oba you have a man obusajja bwo buba tebutegeerekeka naye buli lwoteeka ebyo mu nkola oba omaze okuggulawo omulyango gw'okubeera nti you a man era ojja kuba nesse awakaawo then ebisigadde mutule ku mmeeza extended family omukyala akugambye nti nze nfuna paundi zange 5 nja kukuwangako 150 ezisigadde zakulabirira abantu bange tolwana 150 bwe kiteeka ku bbali kyakuwadde oba otambulisa obulamu.
Amin. Barakallahu fikum Sheikh. Wa alaykum salam. Imam Kasozi sebo unmute yourself. Orayika gwe muntu bitugenda okusembyayo message ndabyo bwesigwa mu bufumbo bumalawo ebyo byonna yo Hajjat Farida Naima Kayira gamba small print ezibadde ndoza ku kintu kya prenups the discussion there were some women there just bring children not knowing how they have struggled to achieve certain assets. Okay. Yes, Imam Kasozi sebo akazindaro kaina tweyanza sebo kubanga oli naffe mukadde kano manyi gyoli embawanga obudde bwatambudde dde naye olunaku lugenze lutya sebo. Hello Imam Kasozi. Imam Kasozi.
Gana wange mukono yagwerabiddeyo.
Yagutaddeyo naye yerabira otuone tumutwalirayo. Hello, Imam Kasozi woli. Okay, I think we should be wrapping up now. Tuine dakika 5 zokka ya Rabbi. Ntuuka buli lunaku ne kinkuba kinkwatira n'okukakkananga tubuliddwa ka window kafeke tubeera kwa ka thank you. Faisal biye kwa sonsubuga. Imam Kasozi woli. Imam Kasozi.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Neyanziza mukisago nate neyanziza abasomesa kuwa okulaba kwange okusooka ndowooza irrespective of waje tuli omusajja mu busiraamu yasigaza obuvunaanyizibwa bw'okumaintaininga family era ebintu byo bisatu byo bibye nga jjajjange Kamulege bw'abitaddewo musulawa mulyaki mwambala ki ebyo bya musajja tebiriimu bibuuzo. Oba oli luddawo oba oli luddawa ngaalira walala oba okyalenjinga kino aye tujijjukirenga buli kiseera Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yatugamba nti huwa alladhi arsala rasulahu bilhuda wa dinil haqq liyudhhirahu ala dini kullihi enkola ezo zonna Katonda yazimanya era zayita eddiini ala dini kullihi kati walau karaha al mushrikina byonna byagala okuteka byoboteekawo mind yaffe ekyokubiri kiki ekituleeta mu bufumbo on either sonye sente oba werese kifuuse ku either side abaami webali n'abakyala webali abalowooza nti nno bakoze strategic move egamba nti ono kamufumbirwe in so much time nja kuba nfuna kino oba nja kuba nfunye kiri. Bwebanga yenniya gy'oleese mu bufumbo almost oba tozze mu bufumbo gwoba olina ekintu ekirala ekyo kyonoonya. N'olwekyo nze njagala kulowooza nti nno oba tuli eyo gye mwogedde prenatal oba prenuptiality ndowooza anyway that should be the complete thing. Nuptiality because means marriage. Yes, ndowooza it is just being abbreviated. Kati kyenjagala tutegeere nti conditions abantu zetteekawo before marriage zonna bwe tuba twagala ziteekawo ziteekwa okuba nga tezicontraveininga end point kuba end point ya busiraamu Chovola banabi sallallahu yagamba tuwase lwa bintu bina nenaga tuwase olw'eddiini tujja kwanguyirwa kuba biri ebirala byonna Mungu abijjawo n'eddiini ejja kusigala nga weeri Kayira ojja kwavuwala Kayira muwala wange ajja kufeedinga okiwulidde ekyokubiri status family gyebaddemu eyinza okukyuka owulidde wawasa wa Idi Amin kuba president ng'abuvaamu what happens naye bw'osigaza eddiini nga kwetambulidde it eases the whole work. Why? Njaga kumaliza conclusion yange egamba nti what is the purpose of religion? Purpose y'eddiini kutuyamba kunnyonnyola bintu ebitali easily understandable. Kyenjagala okusembyayo oli abadde agamba nti kawabeere ne Uganda tuleete ensonga ya gundi ya DNA. Ate n'aleeta excuse enfu egamba nti bakuŋŋaanya abaana bangi. Abaana bonna abo be bakuŋŋaanya kitegeeza mu Busiraamu baba tebamanyi ne bw'aba babaleese bwe tuba tuli mu Busiraamu baba tebalinamu share lwaki tebali mu marital form. Owulidde gwe bw'oba kyova baga nti omwana wo bw'oba wamuzaala mu ngeri yo gye wamuzaalamu kiba kirungi attending ettu bw'oba oyagala bino by'Obusiraamu okuggyako nga tugenda kulamuza ebitali bya Busiraamu bwe biba bigenda bya Busiraamu eyo condition ya pre nayo ku DNA naye bwe tuba mu by'Obusiraamu eba tekola n'akatono. N'olwekyo ekyo kyenyagadde okutereezaamu ekyo naye neyanziza omusomo guno esembayo should we share our resources information ku biki bye tulina.
Yes.
It is very, very, very important for us to appreciate that n'okukisharinga. Lwaki kikendeeza ku burden ne pressure buli muntu gy'ateeka ku munne. Naye lwaki ekyo kibaawo ffenna abasajja bwe tumala okuwasogana n'oddira n'owasa omwana wa Beene abeewa bamuteeka mu kaasi waabwe ne bamusomesa nabo bamusuubira nga bw'olaba bazadde bo nti bakusuubira nti naawe gwe naddala wano waffe mu Africa gwe social security yaabwe owulidde era kimu ekituza
eyema wanga ng'etabukatabuka ya rabbi nga tubaye nga nti tuwunzika
zaza abaana abangi mu Africa alo
tukuwulira
kisembayo ssebo ebadde nga nti ogenda n'owasa nga gwe wase wa Haji Ibrahim kati ate n'oyagala gw'olabirira abeewammwe Nakasoga ate abawa wa Ibrahim mukyala wo tabafaako okitegedde so kyekimu kukireeta zaati buli omuntu akweka ebibye so that onotama naye bw'omanya n'omanya nti Idi etuuse Ramanzaani etuuse waliwo obuzibu obubadde eri n'oteekayo responsibility omukazi takubazalinga nnyo naye lwaki batubazalinga tukeyalinga nnyo ku baffe ne tutafaayo ku baabwe equally n'abakazi ne bafaayo nnyo ku baabwe ne batafaayo eno gye bafumbirwa ekivaamu kyekireeta disparity. Nze nsuubira nti it is important ate nga good okusharinga information ku resources zetulina kituyambe buli omu okudiiringa ne munne ng'amanyi kiki kyali. Ekyo tekitegeeza nti account tulina kukuuma y'emu no tekitegeeza ekyo bwe tuba twagala eyo tusobola okugiteekawo era ekimu ekyalemesa mad bill eyo marriage and divorce bill wane Uganda kyali mu areas ezo abantu ze balowooza nti no nti tuyina
subhanallah
eyema wanga yo yatabuka
criminal property yani abantu werokinga etteeka oba oli awo lyabadde
kapaati ako kabadde kasinga okuba akawuuma
ate imaamu kwakutukidde ya rabbi okay bannaye
Kayira akati
obuuseeko
kiki kyotategedde kyemba mmaliriza
nti wobadde
kapaati ako wobadde owunzikira
embaga nti ekyo kyennyini ekyo kyekyalemesa lino etteeka lye tuyita mad bill kubanga abantu baayagala okuteekawo amateeka agaagala okufuga ebintu by'obufumbo obanga bwedde oba nga tebunnabaawo abantu baga ne beekengera ekyo kati ensi neesigala ng'eri mu buzibu n'olwekyo naffe abalina omukisa ogwaffe ogw'obusaamu nga kirikkira bwe tunakitambuza ekyo nga kyetambula mu respect of where we are tujja kusanga results zaffe zivaayo bulungi. Salaamu alaikum.
Waalaikum salaam wa rahmatullahi. Tuyisizaamu eddakiika nnya ku budde bwaffe obadde bulina okuggweramu naye ng'ate point zibadde nkulu nnyo ate nga mpoomu. Thank you very much for keeping it 75W Radio. Thank you very, very much, and keeping it Ummah connected as well on Zoom and YouTube. Definitely kyendabyemu kyenjizeemu topic y'olwaleero nzibu yaggamba nti osobola okugimaliriza mu lunaku lumu. Erabika nga waliwo issues ezigenda zijja, issues eza trust.
Badde nkusaba ssebo ogikomyewo oluvannyuma inshallah.
Inshallah tulina okunoonya olunaku tufune bwe twisting ekibuuzo tubeeko elements eziri specific ze tuyinza okukwata kubanga tubadde ku kirwadde in general tuyinza okugenda ku specifics naddala engeri gye tuzimba obwesigwa kubanga issue ebadde ya bwesigwa wakati w'abantu kuba nti buli omu yeekengera munne. Olaba comments ezibadde zijja mu chat room ng'owulira bali bagamba abasajja savings zo zaakozesa zennyini ogenda okuwasaamu omukyala. There have been lots of comments ezibadde zigenda mu maaso. So mwebale nnyo very, very much. Naima Kayira says very interesting Sheikh Keke. Ndowooza ez'akameeza zeeyongere. Osabidde mu lujjudde olaba nina bwe ŋŋaana. Mwebale nnyo bannaye kuba ttiimu gikipi.
Kassim oluguddemu.
Mu movie yange mwennyini mwenfiiridde. Barakallahu fiikum. Inshallah Allah tusinkanye ate next week. Kubali kuwumma connected yenkya tujja kukyaza omugenyi atali wa bulijjo. Munnamawulire Haruna Kanabi biidhnillah. Abamanyi eggulire lya Shariati Haruna Kanabi n'enjuki abaali bamanyi eggulire lya Shariati ndowooza eggulire essiraamu eryasooka mu Uganda. Actually eryasooka okubeerawo nga siraamu kubanga ate mu budde obwo twalinawo munno publication munnansi ng'ezo za churches. So eggulire eryasooka okufuluma nga siraamu erya Shariat of course yali tericoveringa only parts ezo eza busiraamu naye baletanga new perspectives mu mboozi. And so tugenda kuba tutwogera ne Haruna Kanabi olunaku lw'enkya inshallah on Ummah Connected off the back of Sheikh Nkata wanabamalidde Riyadh Salihin nga bwe kibadde kiri. Then on Thursday tulina Muslima bajja kuba bajja with a very, very beautiful topic. Very, very, very beautiful topic. It is coming up on Thursday. Friday we cross to UMC. Tujja kuba ne Quran recitation n'abaana okusoma. Saturday again UMC, and then Sunday as usual Sheikh Sekade and team. Mbebaza nnyo mwenna bannaye. Bridging the gap naye ejja kuba nga etambula ku 75W Radio. Beka Kiyingi wajja okuba nga awuuba naye ajja kuba nga atunuulira ku helping the next generation to overcome barriers and the role of the diaspora biidhnillahi azza wa jalla. We have a rumbe straight after this. You can ask them to stay on. Oh subhanallah bali saategedde ku kyarumbe. Naam abali kuno bannaye nti waliwo olumbe olugenda bugenzi mu maaso oluvannyuma lwa lumemo guno okuba nti guwedde. Abasobola tubeegayiridde musobole okuba nti mujjawo. Muslima on Thursday bajja kubeera ku divorce through the eyes of a child. Emirundi egisinga tutunuulira abantu bakulu be bagenza okuba nti balwana. Quite a bit of a connection with today's topic if you think about it. Naye kati now from the eyes of a child. Omwana abagenda kuwangaaliramu atya. Olumbe lwe tugendamu lwa muganda waffe Badru Hassan Matovu. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu waskunhu fil janna. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.